Hi. Actually, everybody that spoke already this morning has said what I'm going to say, which is good because it confirms what I'm going to say, but it's bad because you've heard it. But I'm going to say it in a different way. You heard that I'm a lord, I was managing director of M&S, and it's unlikely because where I came from was a completely different thing. I came from an abusive family. There was sexual abuse in my family. I was born in 1942. I'm Jewish, and they were killing Jews at that time. I'm dyslexic, and I was lost and confused in school, and the way I dealt with my fear and my being lost was to either be funny or be disruptive and, tip up the things on the board, or be innovative and come up with something that nobody's ever thought of and change the rules. But anyway, they didn't like that in the schools in the 50s. In 1957, when I was 15, I was expelled. I was asked to leave school, and I didn't have any qualifications. I was in South Wales, as they said, and I started to work on the street markets in Pontypridd, Maesteg, Abergavenny. And actually, even though I might not be all that good here, I was very good at telling a story then. I could convince people to buy something, and I was doing quite well. And I ended up with, a flashy car, a mohair suit, gold rings, and I thought I was Jack the Lad. But actually, it was tough. I was dealing with people who were unscrupulous. There were a lot of drug dealers there. I got into fights. And this is where the first hero came into my life. My mother's brother, Uncle Harold, after I'd been doing this for about 8 to 10 years, said, look, stop beating yourself up and stop having this life. You think that you're stupid because your two brothers, your older brother and your younger brother in school were logical, linear, and linguistic, and they were academic and great, and therefore you think you're stupid, but there are different types of intelligences. That's one type of intelligence, but there's another type of intelligence which is holistic. That is, dyslexic people often see things in the whole and they don't see things in a long line, and that's very good for retail. So instead of being in the gutter in South Wales, why don't you join a retailer and learn how to be a retailer, and maybe you could do a good business. But I was scared, but he encouraged me, and I went for an interview at M&S, and actually, again, another hero came into my life, and I was extremely lucky again. There were 5 people in front of me, and one of them was the same age as me, David Seif, who was part of the Seif family who ran M&S, and I didn't answer any of the questions correctly, and they were going to tell me no. And he said, wait a minute, this kid has got something which we need here, but he's not right. Let's not give him a job for life. Just let him come into us for 2 years. Within that 2 years, either we won't like him or he'll get bored, but if he stays, then he could be good. So I joined M&S as a junior trainee. Now, a year later, I felt alien there. I didn't feel that I belonged there. There were people who were graduates who came in. I didn't want to go back on the markets. In fact, I didn't feel I belonged anywhere. But now, it's 10 years later, it's 1967, and there's a 6-day war in Israel, and I thought the 2.5 million Jews were going to be pushed into the sea, and I thought, well, I'll go there. I'll become a volunteer. Maybe I'll lose an eye and look really good. And so I went to volunteer to Israel. Now, was that a hero? No, it was because I was scared. And in fact, there's a lot of kids today who are scared, who don't feel they fit into society, and they're going to join all sorts of different militias because of that reason. And they're not necessarily heroes, it's because they're scared. So anyway, while I was in Israel then, I ended up, the war was only on for 6 days. I got there on day 4. The reason they stopped it, because I arrived, they thought, well, Andrew's here, then we better stop. And I was living on a kibbutz, and I started for the first time in my life to start getting a bit depressed because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I was going to do when I came back. And the kibbutznik said, what's the matter with me? And I told them, and they said, look, stop getting worried about what you're going to do. Think about what makes you happy. Because I thought people are socially responsible. They're doing things which are really good. They're people from NGOs, they're journalists, they're doctors, whatever. And I didn't know how to do any of that. And so they said, take a week off and just go into yourself and think what makes you happy. Now, abusive people often don't feel happy themselves, but they see other people's happiness, and they like to see other people happy, and they don't like seeing people being sad. And I said, right, what I want to do is make people happy. I love it when I can make people happy in any way. So somebody said, you should be a comedian. He tells a good story. You should be a comedian, go on the stage and everything like that. So somebody said, no, wait a minute. He could be a doctor. He could cure people. So they said, no, it takes 10 years, and he's 25 already. So then on the kibbutz, people said, just a second, he's been a retailer for 10 years. We're communist or socialist. We don't believe in, capitalism. But can you imagine a retailer where the customer was happy, the staff was happy, the suppliers were happy, the shareholders were happy, obviously, the environment was happy, the community is happy. This would be fantastic. And I thought, that's what M&S was trying to teach me in the year that I was there. So I thought, I'm going to go back to M&S. And I came back messianic, thinking I want to join M&S. So there I was in M&S, being unusual, being disruptive, and being creative, and doing quite well. And then, 10 years later, this is now 1977, Marcus Seif, the chairman of M&S, came into my department, and he was having a meeting, and the merchandiser is sort of pushed to the back of the room, and he started saying something, and I said, wait a minute, that won't work. You couldn't do it like that. You should do it like this and like that. So he said, what? So I said, I'm sorry, but that's what I think. So he said, okay. So then a couple of minutes later, he wanted to do something else. And I said, well, so he said, what's the matter? I said, well, last time I spoke, you didn't like it. So he said, no, tell us what you want to say. So I told him. So he said, I think we'll leave this to Mr. Stone. And he flounced out. And I thought, shit, that's it. That's the end of me. So he said, come back down to my office. So they said, the chairman wants to see you. So I went down there. He said, look, people tell me you've got talent, you've got creativity and everything, but you don't behave. We've got 36,000 people here, and I can't have somebody who breaks the rule. What am I going to do with you? You don't know how to behave. And then, I'm sorry I have to swear here, I said, you're right, I don't know how to bloody behave. And I went to go, because I'd been expelled from school and everything like that. He said, sit down, shut up, I'm going to teach you how to behave. And he took me as his personal assistant. And I became his court jester. And I was very close to him, and he was close to me, and I loved it. And one of the main things he said to me was, look, you have two things, which Safia referred to, you have two things going inside you. One of them is self-preservation, and the other one is liking people. And he said, let me tell you, this is not a stupid thing, this is very clever. There was a Rabbi Hillel, who said, if I'm not for myself, then who will be? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? Which is exactly what Safia was saying earlier. So, during that time with him, one of the things that was most impressive to me, he and a number of other families here were trying to create peace in the Middle East. We were buying £500 million of merchandise from Israel at the time, but nowhere else in the Middle East. And he said, look, I think there may be peace between Egypt and Israel, and I want you to go into Egypt and start buying stuff from there, because if we're buying from both, then you never know, Sadat might go and visit Israel, and there may be peace. And he said, this is so important, Andrew, you don't understand international politics, but I'm telling you, it's so important, I'm prepared to risk your life on it. So there I was, a hero. I went into Egypt about 4 or 5 times. I started doing business. And Sadat visited Israel. And I thought, well, that's it. I'm a genius. Anyway, post Marcus, when I came out from being his PA, I then went back into the company. And because, number one, he liked me. And number two, this is interesting, I didn't know anything. I didn't think I knew what to do. So when somebody asked me a question in my team, and I had a big team and £500 million worth of merchandise to look after, I said, I don't know, let's have a meeting, let's talk about it. And I started to manage in a consensual way, not because I knew that's how to manage, but because I didn't believe I know everything and I'll tell you what to do. So the best people in the company wanted to work for me, and therefore we had this consensual, collaborative working, and therefore everything started to work. And I started doing better and better and better, until eventually they were going to consider me for the board. Now, this is the problem. I then started to have a breakdown. I was running around like a lunatic. I was married. I had 3 kids. I was trying to satisfy everybody. And actually, I knew inside, I didn't know anything. I knew that I was just a storyteller and it was a load of crap. And therefore, I had this thing called imposter syndrome, which is this thing where you get really depressed. So I went to a doctor to try and give me something because I had to give a talk one evening. And the doctor wasn't there. And there was a locum there, Claire Thormod, who was another hero. And she said, I'm not going to give you anything. You are driving yourself mad. You're in fatigue. I'm going to do something which is really unusual. I'm Buddhist, she was. I'm going to send you to a Buddhist monastery for a week to try and give you some rest. And she sent me to a Tibetan Buddhist monastery in Southern Ireland. And after 2 days of meditating, I realized, this is fantastic. Look, there's the Atlantic Ocean, here's Ireland, this is wonderful. And actually, I'm just driving myself mad trying to sell more knickers. And I started to understand a completely different way of being. And now I don't know how to do the next slide. Have I got a thing that I'm supposed to click? Ah, look at that. Isn't that brilliant? Right, this is the only slide. This is the only slide I'm going to have, and it's very complicated, but that line over there, oh, I've got this thing here, right. Right, that line there is time, and this is people. And when I started and I came onto the market, I was really scared, and I was operating from my limbic system, my reptilian brain, the part that is fight and flight. And therefore, I was only interested in how I can survive, me and my family, now and next week, and if I could do that, that's it. And I could be a hero from my dark side. Okay, but when I then joined M&S and Marcus started to telling me about the organization and the nation for next year, next decade, and we were having, principles and strategies, then in that case, I started to be a hero and do these great things. And because Mark Spencer in those days was very famous for being very good, and I thought, that's it, I'm great. But actually, this was narcissistic. A lot of abused people are narcissistic, and I was building myself an image of being this, person who was whatever. But when I then got broken down, I then went to Ireland, and I started to find ways of getting into a higher consciousness, and now I'm thinking that I should operate for all beings for all time. And if you're at B at that point, then in that case, it's blissful for you and blissful for everybody. But how the hell do you do all this and still be up there? And this was my worry. But I came back from the M&S on that level, and then I convinced everybody that if we were really, really good to our suppliers and our staff and our customers and the environment and everything, why would anybody buy from anybody else? Why would anybody want to work for everybody else? And then I became the managing director of M&S because that was the way to do it. And in fact, I know that a lot of people here are involved and interested in that type of management. Anyway, so because I was the managing director of M&S, and because I felt that way, and because I was doing stuff in the Middle East, Tony Blair, who was forming a new form of House of Lords, said, look, we want somebody in there. We've got a lot of Labour people, but Andrew is somebody who believes in socialism and is a successful business person, and also he's doing stuff in the Middle East. Blair was involved in that. So I became a lord and started to do that. And now when I go to Gaza and Jerusalem and Ramallah and Cairo, and I got M&S to buy from Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, or whatever, I thought actually we could make peace. I was wrong, but actually what is good is that I'm still respected in all those different areas, because I see everybody in these different levels, and I understand what level they're at, and I love them all, whatever they say, even if their narrative is different from mine, I respect it. So... and by the way, the other thing I was involved with Ken Robinson, with Blair, was Ken Robinson, who was mentioned earlier, created an organization called the National Advisory Committee on Creativity and Culture in Education. And we had all sorts of people trying to work out how you could change schools so that, as was said this morning, those people who think they don't have talent but have a talent could have that taught. And by the way, there's another organization called Loving Classrooms, run by a guy called Rabbi David Geffen, who teaches teachers how to teach those things in school, but I haven't got time to go on that. Anyway, so, okay, so the three things I learned, which are, and I'm still learning, if you think that you are not good, don't worry, you're not the only one. Everybody thinks they're not good. All those people, there are people who I've met who are chairmen, who are lords, or whatever, and when you actually reveal to yourself that you're scared, they're scared as well. So it's just, look at me with my suit. I could come up here and, give a speech and you think that I was confident. Nobody's confident, and therefore you're not alone, right? And if somebody who you respect says you've got talent, don't push it away because your natural tendency would do it. Accept it and realize that you've got potential. That's number one. Number two, there are three brain states that we all have, and this is really important, that I thought I am at A and I want to be at B. And people keep saying to me, Andrew, stop rubbishing yourself at A. You have to survive. You've survived. You are both B and A. All you have to do is be mindful and realize that you are not a noun, but a verb. You are a process going through this thing. And so I realized that mindfulness and meditation was very important. And then in 2007, this is another 10 years, we created in Parliament an all-party parliamentary group on mindfulness. And we've had 150 Lords and MPs and 250 staff doing an 8-week course on mindfulness in the House of Lords. And we've done a report to the government on mindfulness in education, in the health service because of depression, in the criminal justice system, and in the workplace. And we're also talking about doing a paper now on international relations and mindfulness. And the other thing, finally, is, there's supposed to be a timer here, but I'm sure I'm running out of time. I've got one more minute to say that do not wait until you're 75 before you start realizing that you can do these things, because I still am trying to convince myself by telling you that I can do these things, but in fact, fact, I was saying backstage there that I'm a chameleon. I can come up here and tell you the story, it's the same thing as working on Pontypridd Market, but in fact, this is not me. And my three children, who are now over 30, said to me, Dad, you're 75, you're going to die soon. You've never appeared on the planet. Everybody knows you as the managing director of M&S, as a lord. We even know you as father. We don't know you as you. You never reveal you because you're scared of you, because you hate you. And you do all this meditation and it's crap. So you had better find out who you are before you die, otherwise you're going to die and never appear. And I've taken that seriously, and actually this year I'm going to take it off. I've sold my flat in London. I'm going to go next month for a month to a Buddhist retreat in a monastery, actually in this country, to do 8 hours a day silent meditation. Then I'm going to come back for a month, sort a few things out. Then I'm going to go to India with the Brahma Kumaris, who are Hindu, in Mount Abu in Rajasthan, and I'm going to do some stuff there. Then I'm going to come back for a month. And then I'm going to go to Israel and, look at some of the Middle Eastern wisdoms and see. And by the time I come back, I'm hoping that I don't have to come here and pretend I'm somebody else. But as you were saying earlier on, I'd like to speak the truth, because it's not the truth. This is my show. Thank you.
The Hero Roundtables are the global events that ask the question, what is a hero? You've just seen one hero talk. To find more and join the conversation, visit our website or social media.